wanted to call attention to a couple of things I put somewhere. Here. Well, let me start here. If you didn't see it, two things. This is actually my baptism certificate. And inside is the bulletin from the Sunday I was baptized. July, my real name. Let's see here. Gina. No. Oh! So if you wonder why that's there, is because for all of us, that is our ordination. So all of us are called in our baptism to love God and love our neighbor. And that doesn't matter whether you are a pastor, it doesn't matter whether you are, the person who cleans the floor, it doesn't matter. None of us are better or stronger in faith than anyone else. And celebrating an anniversary of ordination is a wonderful milestone. And I always say that milestones are better than gravestones. So I'm happy to be able to celebrate this one. The 45 years, as Pastor Hoffmeyer wrote so well, are testimony, first of all, to the work of the Spirit and God's patience and sense of humor. The fact that I am blessed to do this and continue to be blessed to have a role in ministry is a gift to me. And certainly, whatever I have been able to do is not me, but somehow the Spirit at work. And I am grateful for that, and grateful for the opportunity to serve, and that the church has survived it. And I look back on my ministry and realize that probably I learned more and got more from what I gave than I could ever imagine or count up. And many of those memories and much of the strength that I find in my own faith and my own walk of faith has come from this community and from your openness to be creative, to open and welcome, as Pastor Lee said, to be able in some way to witness to the love of God with no exceptions. And if that isn't at the heart of God's good news, I don't know what is. And to be a part of this community has meant an enormous amount to me. And I am so grateful to all of you for this opportunity to be here and share this day and this anniversary. Thanks to Pastor Lee, who humbly says that by some accident, she wound up in my homiletic section. And that is a blessing to me in the conversation and her preaching. She was somebody I encouraged to actually take her preaching a little farther because she was so good. And I could see the gifts there that were there for way back in those years of seminary. And I'm very happy that those gifts now have really become part of what nourishes me in my faith. Thank you for that. Thank you for agreeing to do this and to allow me to preside at communion without having to preach. And so that is a gift, and that's something that I find very meaningful. But again, this is baptismal certificate is where we start, all of us. The chance for some of us to serve in different ways, in a variety of different ways, is a gift from God as well. Just remember, all of us, as the hymn says, we're all one in mission. Whether you're the person who stands at the pulpit or the person who stands at the food line at the soup kitchen, we are, none of us, better than the other. We are all doing what God calls us to do whenever we love and serve our neighbors. So think about your baptism. Thank you for having that prayer at the end at the baptismal font. It's where we start. Along the way, we get whatever God gives us and whatever we can give to others freely and graciously. So thank you again for this. Don told a few good stories about years of ministry, and I so appreciate what Ruggieri's and what Jan Peters and what the bishop has said. It's really great. A couple of things that I want to just call to your attention. This cross that I rarely wear was actually a cross that belonged to the pastor who supervised me in internship, which was more than 45 years ago. And while I was there, he died. We hope it wasn't because he was supervising me as intern, but it could be. And his widow wanted to make sure that I had a number of things, including a stole and his cross. and some books from his library. So I wore that today to remember and give thanks for the ministries of so many people who have influenced me. This is the stole I wore when I was ordained. And it was actually a gift from neighbors in my community who were Roman Catholic. And they gave the stole, the white stole, before we realized that I thought ordinations there would be red color. It was in the Easter season back in those days. The synod said, oh no, it's Easter, we're not celebrating Pentecost till later. So I wore the white stole that day, and this is the one that I wore, and it was put on my shoulders. So it's a little frayed and old, but you can take a look at it. Grateful to be able, what 26-year-old person graduating from seminary gets to go to Wildwood, New Jersey for their first call. I had to really be careful about how I shared that with my classmates who were going to St. John's by the gas station. And I'm going to live in a condo that overlooks the water and walk the boardwalk and have this wonderful ministry in a place that was unbelievable. My first call, and I may have mentioned this to some of you, I followed a pastor who had been there for a long time. In fact, he was installed as pastor at Holy Trinity in Wildwood 3 days before I was born. And I was his successor. So that congregation somehow was able to make that transition from a very gracious and good church person, pastor who stayed in the community and was a blessing to me. So that was great. St. Paul's in Teaneck, gift to me, again, because it was multicultural and multiracial. And it was the first time that I began to get more of an inkling of what it meant to live with black skin. And I remember the first time that a confirmation student who could not have possibly been a more, honest, boring person if he tried. And he came to confirmation class late because as he was driving there, he was pulled over. And I said, well, what did you do? And he said, I was DWB. First time I heard it, driving while black. Huh. And then as the conversations unfolded, I realized how much people had to live with the constant fear of what might happen simply because you look different. And this was in a middle-class community that had successfully integrated 20 years before. Again, what a great education. AIDS ministry, again, it was the hardest ministry I ever did, but the ministry I learned the most from. The people that were in this facility were there because there was absolutely no place else they could go. They were homeless, they were poor, they had no support other than the fact that the Lutheran Church said, we need to have a place for you, and opened a facility, fighting 7 years to get the community to agree to have it there. And what a blessing it was. When those folks came to our house to swim, we got a whole lot more out of that than they did. And I can still remember one of our more problem residents who had lots of issues and who was really kind of not quite there all the time. And I remember the time when he just kind of got up out of his wheelchair, walked over to the pool, dived in, and swam to the other end, pulled himself up, looked at the director of nursing, and kind of just went, as if to say, you think I'm hopeless? Oh no. And I think to myself, what a wonderful thing that was for us to see, to not deal with people who are ill with a sense of pity and that they can't help themselves, but to actually remember that these are human beings that simply need the gift of love. St. John's in Summit, great interim ministry for 3 years. It started out as a 9-month call, and 3 years later we were still there. But again, a wonderful opportunity to see another kind of ministry in another kind of church, and to have a staff of people to work with. What an interesting experience that was. So all of those things together, I just am grateful for. I'm grateful for the chance to have had the opportunity to be in contact with so many congregations and so many people of faith. And I keep going back to the story that I remember I heard a long time ago about a Sunday morning. And the wife in the household was ready to go to church, and goes into the bedroom, and her husband is still in bed. And it's like, honey, it's time for church. We gotta go. And he says, oh, I really don't want to. It's like, I don't feel comfortable there. I'm not sure about my faith. I know about this God business. And the people don't like me. They're always, whenever I'm there, I get all these complaints, and it's just, I don't want to go. Just go without me. And she says, well, no, wait a minute. Now think about this. You're in the house of God. God is present, even in the angry people. It's okay. You need to go. It will strengthen you. You'll feel better once you're there. You'll always do. And besides, you're their pastor. You have to testify that pastors are not the people always with the strongest faith or commitment to the church. Sometimes we're there because we have to be. But it is always a gift and a blessing in response. But again, sometimes, as Pastor Lee has preached many times, it's the faith of others that carries us. And that includes those of us who happen to be, in some way, custodians of those instruments called the Word and Sacrament Ministry of the Church. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you all for this day.